and welcome to Taking the Scenic Route, Scenic Regional Library's bi-weekly podcast. I'm Steve Campbell, the library's director. Our podcast provides listeners with a closer look at the library, including interviews with upcoming program presenters, information about new and existing services, interviews with authors, book recommendations from our staff, and much, much more. So let's jump right in and get started. As I've mentioned before, our library has a great partnership with Missourian. Once a quarter, we have 6 or 7 library staff members write reviews for books that they've read and enjoyed. And we send those reviews to the Missourian along with a photo of each reviewer holding a copy of their book. And they publish the reviews as a front page feature article in their People section. The next feature is actually coming out in mid-June, so it should be out very soon. But I know that all residents in our library district don't get to read the Missourian or aren't in the newspaper service area. So I thought it might be a good idea to occasionally have some of our book reviewers from the most recent feature to join me and talk about their books. So this episode, we'll be talking to 3 of our book reviewers about their books. It will be an entire episode of our book reviewers. So my first reviewer today is our Hermann branch manager, Tiffany Richards. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining me. So you did one of the reviews for the Missourian, as you have done many times, actually. I think you've probably submitted several, correct?
Yes. I love doing book reviews, so.
And this time you reviewed The Borrowed Life of Frederick, Fife by Anna Johnston.
Yes, it was a great book.
Well, what's it about? Give us the scoop.
So it is about the gentleman Frederick Fife, who is an older gentleman. He is down on his luck. He's been widowed for a while, but he's recently suffering a housing crisis. So he goes to take a walk around the town and he sees another older gentleman in a wheelchair who seems to be having some kind of emergency, or so he just seems off. So he goes up. He's a very great guy. He goes up to check on this other gentleman, not only to realize that the guy has passed away. And so he's trying to get him to wake up, and there's a mishap of sorts, and the guy falls into the ocean. And so he's standing there left in the wheelchair, and the people from the nursing home come over and are like, "Oh, it's time to leave, Bernard." And he's like, "No, I'm not Bernard." And they just take him to the nursing home.
He sat down in the wheelchair?
Well, they assumed he was Bernard, and so they put him in the wheelchair and they wheeled him away. And so Frederick the whole time is trying to tell him, "I'm not Bernard. I'm not this guy." However, the comforts of the nursing home, having a great meals, company, everything you could imagine. So he keeps trying to tell him he's not this guy, but they
he's
just
enjoying
won't listen
it.
to him.
He's enjoying it a little too much.
He is. He starts to realize it's a really kind of a sweet deal. So as he's there, he's just a very jovial, happy guy, and he starts to mend the issues in Bernard's life. And so he kind of feels like he's getting a second chance at life. And so he starts to make friends in the home, and he starts to fix Bernard's life.
No other resident of this nursing home realizes, hey, this isn't the guy that was just here this morning.
So some of them start to catch on because apparently Bernard was quite cranky and very malcontent. And so they were like, "What happened?" So they kind of thought it was like a side effect of having Alzheimer's or dementia, because Bernard had that. So they were like, "Well, maybe his personality changed and he's just really happy now in life."
So were they similar? I mean, are they similar ages? Is that all some of these guys older too?
Yeah, older guys with white hair. And
okay. Wow. So this is like, would you say this is obviously humor. What other genres would you lump this under, would you say?
It's definitely, I would say, a feel-good fiction.
Feel-good fiction. Okay.
Where it does, because as he goes through and he makes friends in the home and he befriends others who are having hard times in life, you can see his goodness come out as a character. And as you're reading it, it makes you like, man, I wish I could be that amazing of a person or that happy of a person.
You're more like Bernard instead. You're saying no, you're not.
I
You're
mean, if
not.
there was a Bernard Frederick meter, I think we all fall a little closer to one than the other.
Yes, that is for sure. So you like the book then?
I did. I really enjoyed the book. As we were talking earlier, it's set in Australia, so it does have references there, and I even the narrator is Australian, so there are some accents. But
So have you listened to audiobooks done in other like in British accents or Australian accents before?
now that you mention it, yes, I read a lot of British and Australian books that
Listen,
are
you listen to, I guess.
listen
You
to
listen
them.
to, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So,
Mhm.
does it ever? I've never listened to I was going to say a foreign language. It's not a foreign language. A different accent audiobook. Is it? I mean, you have a hard time following it sometimes, or they use different. Sometimes they use different words, for the same things that we like. Isn't like what is the British call a lorry? Isn't that a cab or something?
Mhm.
I mean, do they use language like that that could be a little confusing?
They do, but I just read so much of it myself that I don't even
Uh,
think anything about it. I actually didn't realize it was an Australian book until you said it, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, it was," because they talked about
wow.
being in Sydney and doing things, and I
So,
was like,
so you give this a what? What would you score this out of a 10? Would you say this
I
book?
would definitely give it like an 8.5, 9.
Okay, it's really
It's
funny.
a very it is it's very sweet. It's a book that
Okay,
you could recommend to a lot of different kinds of people. You could recommend to your grandmother. It's a very clean and easy read, but you could also recommend it to a mom who's busy and wants just a good read to sit down and kind of make you feel good, but you don't have to like consistently stay on top of it to get it.
sounds like there's a happy ending to this book too.
There's a moment where you kind of panic. They start to figure out the situation, and then you're like, oh no, Frederick, we're going to be out on the streets again.
Well, I mean, he had a place he lived before. It's not like he would
Well,
like.
he was getting kicked out. So,
Oh,
yes. So
this
he
really worked
was,
out well for him.
it did. It was very serendipitous that he stumbled upon Bernard and his demise. And he was actually trying to help him, which is very much like him.
Sure.
Very
So,
much
is,
like Bernard to just up and die on him.
so is there another author or another book that you've read that you'd compare to this in terms of the humor and the scenario, or at
Yeah.
least the genre?
Yeah, there's a couple books I've kind of recently read that to me kind of stick out in the ability to articulate the human experience, and especially the idea of not being visible, and kind of the invisible people, because that is touched on in this book about how people don't, when you're older population, you become a bit invisible, where people don't necessarily pay attention to what you're saying or are always really listening when you're asking for things. So I really enjoyed Invisible Ellen, which is
Okay.
about a woman who is a cleaner at night, and she believes that she's invisible, because no one pays attention to her and no one really gives her a second glance. In her eyes, she's not very attractive. She's overweight. However, she's on the bus and a blind woman gets mugged, and she just cannot. She has to step in, and so she ends up saving the blind woman from getting mugged, and they end up becoming friends. And then it kind of, this mugging unfolds into this kind of caperous story of where they're trying to save the people in the apartment complex that she lives in. And so it's kind of this turning around your situation and being able to do good for the people around you.
Because I would think that it would be very difficult to make a scenario where people are in a nursing home, light or funny. I mean, most people think of that living in a nursing home as being pretty depressing.
Well, both books touch on something that I really enjoyed, is that human connection aspect. So in the Borrowed Life, it's mostly, there's a very good chunk about when he's in the home, he becomes really good friends with the residents and the workers there. And he talks to them and he listens to them and he connects with them in that aspect. And he builds those relationships with those people. And it's the same in Invisible Ellen, where she starts to build this friendship with the woman she saved and her brother. And then she also, the people she kind of has been watching this whole time in our apartment complex, she knows about their lives and she's been watching them. And so now she has the push to actually help them in their lives. She sees what's going on and she's like, well, I could help them. And so she does. And it's that human connection that I think when you read them, you feel good after you read it, because that's something I think in humanity we all want, is that connection with each other. So even though they're very deep topics, like living in a nursing home,
Sure.
possibly being homeless, it even goes into the relationship with Bernard's daughter, who was estranged.
I would hope the daughter would recognize that it wasn't Bernard when she got in touch with him.
She's only seen him once when she was a child, and then Bernard just up and left.
Oh, wow.
And so Frederick starts to build a relationship with her. And
how does this Frederick guy know about all these Bernard issues? Like, how does he know about all this stuff?
So he snoops around Bernard's room in the nursing home, and he starts to unravel. So there's a letter that he wrote to his daughter.
Oh, I see.
Kind of gives some backstory. He's very he plays dumb a lot, so then people kind of tell him things, and then he gathers the pieces of information, is like, aha, I see what's going on.
But he doesn't pretend he has dementia like Bernard did, does he?
Well, no. There are things he has to pretend that, like Bernard, but it's not necessarily.
Sure.
He sometimes acts like he forgets things. He's like, oh, I forgot that.
Yeah, sure.
One of the nurses catches on, but because they build such a rapport and she's actually having a really hard time in her life and he supports her in that, she kind of decides.
Looks the other way.
Yeah, looks the other way on that one.
Awesome. Well, sounds like a great book, Tiffany.
Yeah, it was really great. So.
Well, thanks for joining me. You can find The Borrowed Life of Frederick Fife by Anna Johnston in our collection. And as Tiffany mentioned, there's also an audiobook version in Australian with an Australian accent. And thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Bye. Our next two reviewers are both from the Sullivan branch. Sydney Lewis is the manager, and Genevieve is the branch's adult programmer. Welcome, Genevieve and Sydney.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. So we'll get right into it. So Sydney, for your review, you did a review on a book called A Serial Killer's Guide to Marriage by Asia, is it Mackay? Mackay?
I think it's Mackay, but she's British. So I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I looked her up. She's Chinese and Scottish, and she lives in London, like you mentioned. And that's quite a title for a book, Serial Killer's Guide to Marriage. So do tell, what is this book about?
It's a little crazy. It's a little out there, but I like it. The premise is two serial killers, but they're good serial killers. As in
like Dexter?
Yeah, like Dexter. Like they only kill people that are already killing others or assaulting others, or like the bad people of the world taking advantage of others. They kill those people. And so they meet. This was like 10 or 12 years ago, and she had just killed someone outside of a bar. He followed her because he thought she was going to need help or need saving, and then saw she took care of it herself. And then from there, it was a whirlwind, and within 6 months, they were married.
They were meant for each other.
They were meant for each other. And so for the first 10 years of their marriage, they were just killing and having fun, but then they had a baby. And at that, they were like, we've got to put this behind us. Fox, the male protagonist, was like, we need to put this behind us. We need to make sure we have a stable family and stable home life for our daughter. Because
I've heard of parent or couples changing their lifestyle dramatically after the birth of their first child, but that's
another extensive.
I would say.
And Hazel, who is our female protagonist, so she comes from a very different background than Fox. Fox grew up very privileged, white and wealthy, and his parents, they were dysfunctional. They didn't show their love. They were the typical like wealthy, keep you at arm's length but you have to like
typical serial killer parents.
Typical serial killer parents, you know? And then Hazel, on the other hand, she had a horribly traumatic childhood. She grew up in multiple unstable foster homes, dealt with various men abusing her that were people in positions of power or other foster youth. So she didn't trust men, and so that's why she typically killed
people.
Killed people.
Wow.
Killed men. She never killed women. So we have some man hating here, but
this is quite a synopsis here.
I know, right?
This can turn into an entire philosophical conversation about vigilantism, and
it could. We won't go that
far. You're not
though.
Condoning this behavior, are you?
I'm not condoning it, but I'm not necessarily like completely opposed because the justice system leaves some things to be desired. I don't know.
We'll pretend we didn't hear this. We'll pretend we didn't hear that. Yeah.
Definitely.
So is there, after the baby, they stop doing this?
After the baby, they stop. And it's been probably about 3 years now. And Hazel's itching. She's itching to kill someone. Like, she's ready. And so finally what happens is she cheats on him, not by like traditional cheating, but just cheating as in she kills someone without him. And then she's trying to keep it from him because she's worried their whole marriage will fall apart. And she also makes this best friend who what happens to be a on-leave detective that is been tracking them, not knowing they are the serial killers, and thinks it's her husband. And so she has to get that thought, like redirect her new best friend to not think that it is her husband being the murderer.
No spoiler alerts. Don't ruin the ending.
Yeah, I was like, I won't go into that, but they're just trying to get on with this marriage and have a cookie cutter life in London, and it's not working. And so you see how that all kind of evolves and what happens from there.
Is there a shocking ending?
Yes, there's a little bit of a shocking ending.
A little bit of a shocking ending?
It's not too crazy. I've seen some really crazy things.
Please tell me that this is some kind of like black comedy or something like that. This is not like a serious book, is it?
It's a little bit of like a black comedy, but it's not super funny, I wouldn't say.
That makes this even worse.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
So this is in now with like books. There's another book that just came out in April. It's called Serial Killer Games by Kate Posey. And we also have it at Scenic. I haven't read it yet, but I kind of want to. And it says, what would you do if you thought your coworker was getting away with murder? Literally. Dolores Dela Cruz has been dying to spot one in the wild, and he fits the mold perfectly. Strangler gloves, calculated charm, and it's like a romance.
So, okay, let's back up here. Let's back up here. So, did you like this book?
No, I really liked this book.
You did? Oh, you did like the book. Okay.
I did enjoy it.
Why did you like it?
I enjoyed it because I liked seeing that the world is not so black and white, and seeing what motivates someone to kill. Not necessarily that they're in the right or in the wrong, which they're more in the wrong, obviously.
He's hedging, Genevieve. You see that? If they're in the right or the wrong.
I know, but it makes them likable. Seeing how the writer is able to make a serial killer likable, and that you're actually hoping for them to not get caught.
Well, that's a big thing now, like all these real popular shows, like, well, way back starting with The Sopranos, and then you had, the Walter White character from Breaking Bad. They take these bad people and they make them attractive to the audience.
They do. They romanticize them. And that's been a big thing now with, like, villains. I know, especially Disney villains. They'll do, like, different books, and they will do it from the villain's point of view. And I love those books.
And what is this other author that you mentioned that you haven't read yet who is like Asia Mackay's?
Her name is Kate Posey, and this is her first book, I think.
Wow.
So she's a newer one, but it looks really
would you
good.
Call this, what genre would you classify this as?
Not
dark comedy.
No, I call it a cozy mystery kind of, because it's still not super bloody. So like it's not like I'd still consider it cozy.
So it's not graphic. It doesn't have a lot of graphic violence.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't have a lot of graphic violence.
What is their method of killing? What is the couple's method of killing?
Stabbing.
Oh my God.
But it's still not like, this sounds horrible, but it's not super graphic. Like it's for the millennials.
That is a
I'll say it's a book
very,
for the millennials.
that's not saying much about millennials.
I
That is
know.
a very intimate way to kill people with knives, stabbing. Genevieve,
Yeah.
what do you think about her book? Have you read it? Have you read it?
No, I have not read it.
Would you read it?
I don't know. That's not the genre I usually pick whenever I read.
What's your favorite genre?
I like either like thrillers, not like serial killer based like ones like that, where it's pro serial killer.
Yeah, not the pro
Mine are
serial
always like
killers.
anti-serial killer. I like that.
That's a better path, I think.
Yeah. Yes, I like that. Romance and then historical fiction. Those are probably
Sure.
my
Which
favorite.
brings us to your book then.
It
'Cause
does.
you reviewed The Women by Kristin Hannah, and obviously she's an enormously popular author, has written dozens of titles. I think I did some research. I think she's written of all the books she's written about 4 historical fiction novels, including this book, The Women. What can you tell us about that book?
So I really liked it. This one is my 3rd book by her that I've read. It's like a complete 180 from Sydney's book.
Yeah, everything would be, I think.
But it follows this woman, young girl really, named Frankie. She ends up enlisting in the army after her brother does, and she goes over to Vietnam and serves as a nurse. And it kind of follows her from going and being really, really naive and unknowing and just going from a society life into like, hey, you're on the war front, you got to save these people. And so kind of seeing her grow through that was really cool. But in the book, it starts out with her going over there and she meets her 2 friends, Ethel and Barb, and they're a lot more seasoned than she is because they've been over there in Vietnam longer. But it's split into 2 or 3 parts. The first part is whenever she's in Vietnam and serving on the war front and helping these soldiers. And then the second part is after the war ends and kind of like how she copes with coming back, because as you know, like at Vietnam, a lot of the soldiers and stuff were shunned and shamed and stuff. So she goes through that, and then also a lot of people would say there were no women in Vietnam. So it kind of looks at the view of her having PTSD and not understanding why she's struggling or why people are denying like that she served, and trying to kind of find herself and come back from that. And this is a really like overarching description. There's a lot that happens in between. She has a couple of love interests. Some of them are great, others not so great. It shows you kind of some of the cruelties of war and being on the war front, and just I liked it because I had never really thought about, oh my goodness, there were women in Vietnam. Just because I always thought of the soldiers and the men that were on the front lines, not necessarily so much about the nurses that were helping those men after they got attacked and stuff like that. So 10 out of 10, I would recommend it.
Have you read books by her before, Kristin Hannah?
Yeah. I read the first one of hers I read was The Nightingale, which takes place during World War II.
Okay.
And then the other one I read was The Great Alone, which takes place in the 70s. The Nightingale was probably in ranking, I would put with The Women at number 1, and then The Nightingale, and then The Great Alone. But all of her books are phenomenal.
They're all 10 out of 10s? 9 out of 10?
Yes, 10 out of 10s.
10 out of 10?
10 out of 10s, yes.
Actually, so you've only read her historical fiction then?
So The Women and The Nightingale are historical fiction, and then The Great Alone wasn't historical fiction. It just took place in the 70s. She's got a couple others that I want to read. I know The Four Winds is one of hers that takes place during the Great Depression that I'd like. But all of these, we read them for our book club here at Sullivan.
Okay, sure.
And I know anytime we pick a Kristin Hannah, we're going to all absolutely love it, and we're going to have such deep conversations about it. My favorite conversations are whenever we talk about her books, just because there's so much in them and so much to talk about.
What is it about her writing that you think makes her so popular? What do you like the most about it?
I like how she takes parts of history that everyone knows about it and kind of puts a new spin on it. So like with this one, it was about, like I said, the nurses in Vietnam. And I really like The Nightingale because it was about 2 sisters living in France. I had never thought about the people in France whenever I think about World War II. I always just think about like Germany and stuff like that. But I think it's that. And then she just has a phenomenal prose. So like whenever you're reading her books, you feel like you're there. And whenever I read them, I'm not always emotional whenever I read books, but I always end up on like laughing or crying whenever I read her. She's just so good at getting that emotion and helping you feel like you're right there with that character.
So does she? So she really delves into the Vietnam War in this particular book. The women, she really goes into it in depth about the combat and
Yes.
shelling and
Um,
artillery, everything like that happening.
She really goes into the aftermath because these women really get to see the soldiers coming back from that combat. So some of the soldiers are coming back, they're dying. They have the gunshot wounds and like even seeing the people that are there. And one of the lines that stuck out to me was the other nurses said, "You can't save them all, so all you can do is sit here and hold their hand and tell them it's going to be okay." It was very heartbreaking because even in her writing, it felt like you were there and seeing these soldiers and just seeing this aftermath and you wanting to help, but knowing that all you can do is just have her sit there and hold their hand. And it was
Wow.
phenomenal.
You know, my father was in Vietnam.
Really?
He was in the Marines. He was in combat. He was a sniper even
Hmm.
in the Marines. So he's had, tells some stories, but he's got PTSD from the war as well. So it was pretty traumatic over there, I'd say, for everyone over there, just because of the nature of the war, I think.
Yeah. I know it's hard, like you said, like with your father seeing that PTSD. My uncle was in it, and he has a lot of reading the second half of the book about Frankie and seeing that PTSD in her. I was like, man, this really makes me think of my uncle right now.
Hmm.
And the other women that were in our book club, they all started sharing about family members they had had in
Wow.
Vietnam. And we were like, it's literally like looking at our family members and kind of helping us better understand what they went through.
Yeah.
Even though it's fiction, just reading it, it's like, man, you can just see it
Hmm.
in her. And then whenever we look at our friends and family, it's like, oh, that's why.
It's a great way to personalize the book for people, I think. So, and so while I have you on here, you should plug your book club and tell everyone when it meets and everything like that.
I should. That's a good idea. We usually meet on the third Tuesday of every month at 6 o'clock. Tonight's actually my book club here at Sullivan. We switch up genres every month, usually after a Kristin Hannah, because they're usually heavier. We read something light to switch. So tonight we're talking about How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. It's a cozy mystery.
And tonight actually will be when this comes out, like a few days before. So people will miss this month's
Yeah,
book
they'll
club.
miss our book club, but if they come
Do you know what book will
on
be next month's book club book?
So July's book club book is going to be Verity by Colleen Hoover, which is
Okay.
a very intense thriller. But we're
Great.
meeting on July 15th at 6 o'clock to talk about that one, and people can stop in and pick up copies. We have regular print and large print, but they can come in. I always say love it or hate it. We'd love to hear your thoughts about it.
Sure. Great. Well, that's awesome. I always find it interesting about Kristen Hannah. From what I've read about her, she was an attorney, and yet none of her books involve characters that are attorneys, and she has like nothing to do with none of her books are legal thrillers. It's strange that that's like what she did as a profession before becoming an author, and yet she does not incorporate that into her books in the least.
No, it's weird thinking about her having that type of job and be able and then writing this sort of stuff. Usually her books revolve around women and families and just or like sisterhood or like friendships.
Hmm.
So knowing she had like such a serious background and then I think that kind of comes over in her the seriousness of her topics, but they're never like legal or anything like
Sure.
related
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, thank you both, Sydney and Genevieve. Sydney, you have a very unique book for us. We'll call it the serial killer genre of fiction.
Right,
We'll
the
call
serial
it.
killer genre, yes.
Yes. So you can find both a Serial Killer's Guide to Marriage by Asia Mackay, the book Sydney spoke about, and The Women by Kristin Hannah, which is the bestseller that Genevieve spoke about in our collection. Thank you both so much for being on.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up the latest episode of Taking the Scenic Route, Scenic Regional Libraries podcast. I hope that you can join me again in 2 weeks when we release our next episode.